Hi everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. In this video we'll be taking you through our Disney Halloween on the High Seas cruise from New York in October 2023 aboard the Disney Dream. This was our fourth Disney cruise and our fourth Disney ship, and we loved exploring the Dream. There's so much to say that we've split this vlog in two. In part 1 here we'll talk through our time on board and what we did on this cruise. In part 2, coming next week, we'll talk about some of the more practical bits, an overview of the ship, and our tips for your trip. If we scoot over anything in this vlog, don't worry, we'll cover it off in part 2, so make sure to subscribe to support the channel and to catch this second part.
Happy Halloween!
In recent years, around October each year, Disney has operated Halloween-themed cruises out of New York, which vary between heading up to Canada or down to Bermuda. These typically last around 4 to 6 nights depending on the itinerary. We booked a 4-night cruise to Bermuda as part of a longer trip to New York, leaving on Halloween itself, with our first full day out at sea, our second in Bermuda, and our third day again at sea as we sailed back to New York. Our embarkation day began in New York City at the Intercontinental Hotel Times Square. I've talked through our time in New York in our previous vlog, so make sure to check that out, including what we got up to that morning visiting Summit One Vanderbilt. Back at the hotel around late morning, we picked up our luggage and jumped in a taxi over to Pier 92, right by the Intrepid Museum. It was a really short drive across to the pier, but on arrival it was a bit chaotic. Our overall feeling of the cruise terminal in New York is that it didn't seem particularly well managed. We'd heard anecdotally that they do take a long time disembarking passengers, which in our case led to a delay boarding and large queues at the terminal. So on arrival, we were greeted with a mass of people and chaos. Fortunately, a porter greeted us from our taxi and kindly led us inside and directed us to the correct queue. Disney was staggering people based on their assigned arrival time, and a lot of people were made to wait outside if they arrived before that time. Fortunately, we timed our arrival just right at around 11 AM and we were able to check in without too much of a wait. Once inside, the terminal itself was nice enough, but due to the delays the hall quickly filled up with people. In the end, we were maybe an hour or so late boarding, and after another decent sized queue to board, we were finally aboard the Disney Dream. As usual, we were greeted on board as a family, which is always a lovely moment, and on the Dream you're welcomed into the main hall on Deck 3. As with the other Disney ships, this area is the central hub with something always going on. Unlike when we boarded the Wish on our last cruise, there wasn't a welcome ceremony, but we didn't mind as we were so excited to be on board Disney Cruise Line again, and set out to explore the ship until our stateroom was ready. Our first step was to go up a deck to the balcony where Mickey Mouse was greeting guests in his Halloween costume. We always like to meet a character or two as soon as we get on board, as there are rarely any queues. After that, we always head straight to get some food, again before the queues build up, so we were off to Cabanas, the buffet on board, for our lunch. We absolutely love Cabanas, with a great selection of food and brilliant quality. We were able to enjoy our food with amazing views out across the city, and we were able to catch our breath, take our time and settle into the cruise. Being in Cabanas with a view to the Statue of Liberty in the background was surreal. We love all of the different places we can explore from Disney Cruise Line. With lunch sorted, we now had time to start enjoying the ship and exploring. In the past, we've used this time to hit the pool while it's not that busy, but being in New York in October, it wasn't really the weather. Instead, we spent some time on the upper decks playing table tennis, mini golf, basketball, and all the time we were surrounded by skyline views of New York, which felt surreal. We took the opportunity to get plenty of photos of the skyline and the famous funnel, and then by around 2:30 we were allowed into our stateroom. Our luggage wasn't outside yet. Normally it's waiting outside ready for us, but it arrived less than an hour later. It seemed like the crew were rushing around to catch up after the initial delays. Nevertheless, we were still able to get inside the room, have a chill and get settled, and our silver Castaway Club gifts were waiting for us. We'd also pre-booked the romance package for around $160, and this was waiting in the room when we arrived. The main reason we chose this was because it comes with 2 luxury robes, which we'd probably pay more for this on their own. We absolutely love these, they're so soft and warm and well worth the money. In addition to the robes, we got some chocolates, sparkling wine and a rose. We initially had this New York cruise booked for our 10th wedding anniversary, but this hit in 2020, so was cancelled by the pandemic. This was a little nod to being able to celebrate this 3 years later. The room itself was an outside room with a veranda. We'd originally booked an inside room to fit with our budget. However, nearer the time, the price to upgrade really came down and we were able to upgrade for around $330 for the whole trip, which felt reasonable. We also thought this would make it easier to take in the views, particularly coming in and out of New York. As is always the case with Disney Cruise Line, our room was lovely, with a double bed and then bunk beds for the kids, which are pulled down by your room attendant and then put back every day. We had what's known as a split bathroom, which is a separate toilet and shower room, which is always handy with there being 4 of us. We took the opportunity to settle into our room, unpack and put our magnets and fish extender on our door before heading to the mandatory muster drill in the theatre. I've explained the fish extender process in a separate short which you can find on our YouTube Shorts playlist or pinned to our Instagram, but basically it's a gift exchange arrangement that we love taking part in on each cruise. I'll go into more detail on what this is and how it works in part 2 of the vlog. With the muster drill done, we headed down to the main hall to start enjoying some Halloween fun. The way the Halloween on the high seas cruises generally work is the ship is decked out in Halloween decorations and the characters are usually in their Halloween outfits for at least a couple of days, but there's always one day which is the designated Halloween day, where there are some extra events and trick-or-treating. For our cruise, it was a little different, as we were boarding the ship actually on Halloween itself, so naturally the Halloween activities had to be moved to embarkation day. This meant we didn't get a sail away party that afternoon, which was a bit of a bummer as this is always one of our favourite things, and the Halloween activities felt a little rushed. In fact, when we reached the hall, we found out that they weren't actually doing trick-or-treating because of logistics apparently. Their plan was to leave some candy in our staterooms, but this defeats the fun of trick-or-treating. Our kids were devastated. Trick-or-treating was the main thing they were looking forward to on Halloween, and loads of other kids around us were in tears as well. It did put a massive dampener on the evening, but we decided to try and make the most of it still and sat and enjoyed spooky stories by the Halloween tree in the hall. This looks spectacular and it's beautifully decorated, although I think there was only one reading by the tree, which was a shame, so make sure to catch this when you can. There were lots of characters around in their Halloween outfits, which was fun, but it was now time for our evening meal. As usual, we'd reserved a spot on the first dining sit-in at 5:45, and our first night was assigned in the Royal Court restaurant. We were seated on table 74, which was pretty near the middle of the room. This would ordinarily be a lovely table, but given that we were actually setting sail during the meal, we would have preferred a table by the window. One of the main things we were looking forward to on this sailing was sailing in and out of New York, watching the skyline and sailing past the Statue of Liberty. I think if the ship had been on time and gone by the original schedule, we would have seen this before the meal. But the delays meant that we were late in setting off and we were eating as we were leaving, which was really disappointing. I abandoned my meal and popped outside to see the Statue of Liberty as we went past, but it did kind of put a downer on the meal, as despite it being really good, we wanted to all be outside enjoying the views together. If this is a big deal for you, it might be worth reserving the later seating so you can enjoy setting sail without worrying about missing anything. Royal Court is a princess-themed restaurant. It's very regal and beautiful, and it's a lovely setting. And of course, the food and service was amazing as usual, despite our frustrations with the timings. On Disney Cruise Line, your servers stay with you every evening, meaning they get to know you and you them, which is another lovely aspect to the cruises. Our servers were superb and helped make our cruise really special, catering to our preferences and requests, playing with the kids and telling jokes. After our meal, we spotted some guests with some trick-or-treat bags, so we asked them, and apparently Disney were running some trick-or-treating in some of the bar areas, but hadn't widely announced it. We will always be honest in these videos, and whilst we were over the moon that there was some trick-or-treating, it was so frustrating as we'd been told by 3 different cast members before this point that it definitely wouldn't be happening. We'll never know if they were just ill-informed or this was a last-minute change due to the amount of complaints they'd received about this decision, as the queue for guest services was huge all evening, with everybody really upset about the lack of trick-or-treating. I've no idea why they did it this way, but we immediately headed over and the kids had a blast running around the stations and collecting candy after all, which was really nice. It was just such a shame that there wasn't an announcement made or the app updated to show where this activity was happening, as it was in the adult specific areas, so not somewhere that most families would have seen. We made sure to tell almost everyone we passed to go and enjoy it, but know from talking to others later in the cruise that they completely missed this as had been told it wasn't happening, so just went to bed with very disappointed little ones. Next up was the Halloween deck party, which was a fun little Halloween show with characters, music and dancing, similar to the sail away and pirate parties that Disney routinely run. With it being colder weather, it didn't lend itself to spending tons of time on deck partying, so as soon as the show was finished, we headed back down to the room to get some rest. We found some fish extender gifts had already been left as well, which was lovely and really exciting for the kids. It had very much been an up and down day, not how we'd hoped it would have gone, but we were still on a Disney cruise and were so excited for the next few days. The next morning, we were planning to get out and explore the ship. Unfortunately, once we'd got out to sea, the waters had got pretty choppy. Laying in bed, this can be quite nice to a degree, as it's like being rocked to sleep, but this was next level, and I felt quite ill through the night. I woke up early and decided to head out at around 5:30 to walk the ship while it was quiet and to try and get some fresh air. It was lovely and peaceful, but I didn't make it very far, and I wasn't the only one feeling rough, with lots of others on deck clearly struggling with seasickness too. I admitted defeat and headed back to the room, and unfortunately spent most of the rest of the morning being sick. Greg and the kids managed to sleep a little longer, but once they were awake, they too weren't feeling that great, and we were all really struggling. We were on deck 6 and were located right at the front of the ship, so when we rode the waves you could feel the ship rise up and come crashing down on the other side, or that's what it felt like at least. The whole room would shudder and groan, and it was really unsettling. The waves were crashing up high and the spray on our balcony was crazy. Obviously, sailing out into the Atlantic in October wasn't one of our best ideas. Greg managed to stagger down to the medical centre for some advice, and on the door they had a stack of information sheets and packets of anti-sickness tablets for free. We'd brought some Dramamine with us, which the kids and Greg tried, and I gave the free tablets a try, which were a bit stronger. We found this did take the edge off, but after a while it made us a little bit drowsy. I get seasick a lot on smaller ships, but have generally been okay on all cruises up to this point, so please don't let this put you off taking a cruise. Maybe just stick to one in smoother seas to begin with, if it's something you're prone to as well. After a while, Greg and Eva decided to venture out to midship and the outer decks to see if this helped, and they found it really did. Sitting on a bench taking in the fresh air and the horizon, in midship where it's a little bit more stable, really made them feel better. So if you're ever struggling, give this a try. Feeling a bit better, they picked up some breakfast from cabanas and took it to the outer decks to eat it, and then brought us some back to the room. I was still really struggling, but managed to venture to the balcony, eat a tiny bit. Unfortunately, the waters seemed to settle down a little as the day went on, which was very much welcomed. We eventually all felt well enough to try leaving the room together at around 11:30. I still felt rotten, but at least I wasn't as bad as I was earlier. On the way out, we bumped into our stateroom host. He obviously hadn't been able to sort out our room for the day yet, but said a lot of people had also stayed in their rooms that morning, so had been feeling exactly the same way. First of all, we headed for midship and the outer decks to help us settle a little bit more, and spent some time playing shuffleboard, which is one of our favourite things to do on a cruise. Unfortunately, it was raining though, so not the weather for hanging around outside. We then spent a bit of time wandering the ship, dropping off our fish extender gifts and hiding some ducks around the ship, shopping and generally exploring. We did pop up to the pool deck briefly, which was really busy, but the pool was actually shut all day because of the weather, so people were just sitting around watching the movies on funnel vision. After another little rest in the room and opening some more fish extender gifts, we headed out to our appointment at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique for Pirates League. It was pirate night on board that day, so on these days they do special pirate themed makeovers, which are really fun for the kids. We'd booked the basic package for $60 per person, which includes makeup, a bag, a coin necklace, a bandana, an eye patch, an earring and a sword. There are a couple more packages above this as well that offer even more. However, when we arrived, we experienced the embarrassment of being an hour late as we hadn't realised the time zone had changed. Our phones obviously hadn't updated as we didn't have Wi-Fi, and normally the stateroom host updates the clocks in the room, but with us being unwell he hadn't been able to do this and we weren't in any frame of mind to remember. We were mortified, but the cast members were brilliant and managed to work things out so they could squeeze us in anyway, for which we were really grateful. The kids had a lovely time and got all pirated up, and we were ready to meet some of the characters in their pirate outfits and head for dinner. With it being a 4-night cruise, we had a night in each of the 3 restaurants plus a second one in one of them. For us this was Royal Court again, so we were here for Pirate Night, except with a special pirate themed menu. This isn't our favourite menu and it hasn't changed over the years, but we still had a lovely meal and evening, despite feeling a bit iffy still. I didn't eat anything from the main menu as I still wasn't feeling right, but our servers were brilliant, bringing us ginger ale and apple slices to help with the nausea, and we even noticed that ginger ale was added to the drinks machines earlier in the day, so they're really helpful at trying to do all they can to combat this. They also told us that salt on the tongue helps, and at this point I was up for trying anything. With us still feeling a bit off, we decided to give the Pirate Deck Show a miss. This takes place on the pool deck and is a short show featuring Mickey and the gang, followed by fireworks. However, we've done this a couple of times before and weren't feeling up to a late night, so we called it a day, hoping for a better day in Bermuda the next day. Fortunately, when we awoke, the sea was much calmer and we felt almost back to normal. Nevertheless, I kept up with my sickness tablets just to make sure. We were excited for a fun day in Bermuda, so we're up early for breakfast in cabanas at around 7:45. We wanted to make sure we had enough time between breakfast and going ashore to do some of the special Halloween character meets. Our top 2 were the Sanderson sisters and Jack and Sally. Both are insanely popular, so make sure to get in line early. We started with the Sanderson sisters, getting there early, queuing for around 20 minutes, and we were maybe 5th in line. They're really strict for these popular meets, with strictly one photo per stateroom and no autographs, so you do whiz through. This meant we were able to squeeze in Jack and Sally too, and they were so fun and a brilliant character meet. They take their time and chat to everyone as well, which is great, but can mean the queue can take much longer. So by around 9:30 we were done and went and got our bags for the day, ready to head ashore in Bermuda. Unfortunately, Disney had cut short the time we had in Bermuda. We assumed because of the weather and seas, so we had to change up our plans, and I'll talk through our time in Bermuda later in the series, so subscribe to check that out. But we were ashore around 10 AM and back on board by 3 PM, having had a fantastic day on this beautiful island. Back on board, we headed up to the room to get changed and ready for the evening, before heading out up to the top decks to get some ice creams and treats from Vanellope's. This is a brilliant little sweets and treats cafe, which cost extra, but it's well worth it. So we got a couple of cupcakes to go with our ice creams and Coke floats from on deck, which are free. We chilled out enjoying these, hanging out ready for the sail away party, which had been moved to today as part of the schedule reshuffle. A baffling decision as we'd been on board for a few days already now, but I suppose we were sailing away from Bermuda. We departed Bermuda at around 4:30, which was earlier than initially planned, and the show started on the top deck shortly after. This was lots of fun, but didn't quite have the same buzz as it normally does without that first day excitement. With a bit of time to kill before dinner, we fit in a quick round of mini golf, making the most of the pleasant weather as we headed back out into the Atlantic. Dinner this evening was in Animator's Palette, our favourite restaurant, and it was a great meal as usual. Tonight it was Turtle Talk with Crush, and it was great fun to interact with him on the screens around the room. Sometimes you also get to draw your own character and see it come to life on the screens, but this wasn't running in the restaurant this evening. Next up, we had a choice between the show, which was Beauty and the Beast, or to go swimming. Because we hadn't been well and because of the choppy seas, we hadn't had a chance to go in the pools yet. We were concerned the weather would be rough and the pool closed again the next day, so we decided to take our chance and go for a swim while we could. We love going for an evening swim on a cruise as the pools and slides are much quieter and it's so much fun. Our plan was to go on the aqueduct, but the weather and wind were picking up already, so it had been closed. We decided to just chill out in the hot tubs for a while instead, which was still a lot of fun. It's a shame we missed the show, but unfortunately we knew something had to give as we didn't have time to do everything. Back in the room, we took the chance to order some cookies and milk from room service, another one of our favourite things to do as this is free on board, and enjoyed this snuggled in our room while the wind and spray howled outside. The next morning, the weather and seas were really rough again, but we didn't feel nearly as bad. I don't know if it was the tablets or if we just got our sea legs, but either way we were able to get on with our day and enjoy our last day, which was really nice. With the weather being iffy, the pool was closed again, which meant we had the day free to fit in all the other bits we wanted to do and hadn't been able to do on our first day. First off, we went and had a look around the Oceaneers Club and the Edge, which are two of the kids' clubs, and they had open houses, which means that anyone can go in for a look around. Then we headed for breakfast at Cabanas and had a lovely meal looking out over the ocean while enjoying some churro Mickey waffles. Afterwards, Finley wanted to go and play in the Oceaneers Club, so we dropped him off while Eva fancied doing some trivia, so the three of us had fun doing this while Finley played at the kids' club. Then with the four of us back together, we spent the next couple of hours dropping off the last of our fish extender gifts, shopping and doing the midship detective agency game. This is a really fun interactive game that takes you around the ship helping to solve a case. We chose the Muppet themed one and it's something we really have fun doing together. This is available on both the Dream and the Fantasy ships. We also managed to fit in watching the Diaper Dash, which takes place in the main hall and is loads of fun to watch, before it was time for lunch back at Cabanas and a rest after a busy morning.
Oh, and we've got like a squishy play toy too. Okay, let's see which bribery works the best. Are we ready? After 3, we're going to say raise those babies. 1, 2, 3, raise those babies! Oh my gosh! Baby number 2 is stalling. That is please. Oh no! Baby number 9 is working.
For the afternoon, it was more of the same. The Midship Detective Agency, more characters, trivia, and we fit in an animation class too. Not that our efforts looked much like Stitch. Of course, we also made sure to stop by the DVC booth for our daily free gift as well. By mid-afternoon, we decided it was time for a snack, so for a treat we went back to Vanellope's on the pool deck, going for the Go-Kart Sundae, which at $13, split between 4 of us, seemed really reasonable, and it was absolutely delicious. The kids loved this treat and it was more than enough for us all. It was also really lovely to be able to use the car as a souvenir and take home after the trip as well. After more fun around the ship, our final dinner for the cruise was at Enchanted Garden, which is inspired by the Gardens of Versailles in Paris. It's a beautiful setting and the lighting changes slowly from day to night while you dine. The food was lovely, it was a brilliant evening, and we said goodbye to our servers Balbina and Kitty Shy, who had taken wonderful care of us. Back in the room afterwards, we had to spend some time quickly packing and getting our luggage tagged and ready to leave outside our room. Provided you get it out by 10 p.m, Disney will take it away and take it off the ship for you, making the next morning much easier. With the admin sorted, we headed back out to catch the show for the evening, which was Disney's Believe. We've seen this before and love it. It has a very loose storyline, but it's basically an excuse to run through a load of classic Disney songs with all of the characters dancing, and it's so much fun and brilliant Disney. If this is on your cruise and you love Disney films, songs and characters, then make sure you catch this brilliant show. Although it was late by now, we weren't finished yet. On the last night of every cruise, there's a farewell show in the Grand Hall around 10 p.m, which is a lovely little send-off to round out the cruise.
Everyone's favourite part, let's go crazy for Bermuda! Oh, here it is, you've seen all cruise long, give it up for Goofy! Now here comes a diva, that's right, she's super sassy, let's hear it for Daisy Duck! Now he's never far behind her, let's hear it for the number 1 duck on the high seas, it's Donald Duck! Number 1! Oh, thanks for coming, Donald. But now let's make some way, we're going to go nuts for Chip and Dale! And now you can never have too many captains on board the Disney Dream. Let's hear it for Captain Mickey Mouse and Captain Minnie Mouse!
It's a really short little show where a load of Disney characters are introduced to the crowd, including Mickey and the gang and some of the princesses. Immediately afterwards, they spread out around the hall and across the decks for meet and greets. It's a bit manic, but it's great fun, running from one character to another to get one last picture with as many as you can. And so with that, after a lovely last day, we headed back to our room to get some sleep, ready for our journey home the next day. Our cabin host had made up the room for us as usual, with the kids' beds all ready, and as always with a chocolate and a different towel animal each day, which the kids always love. The next morning, everybody gets assigned a dining room for breakfast, usually the restaurant you ate in the night before, so in our case it was Enchanted Garden. However, this requires you to bring everything with you at a set time, usually very early, especially if you're on the early dining sitting. We normally do this, but on this occasion we decided we'd try Cabanas one last time, which is also open and doesn't have a set time that you need to visit. It was pretty busy, but we did manage to get a table, and in the end it's a much more relaxing way for us to spend breakfast, with a lot more flexibility. Afterwards we were able to wander the deck one more time before we headed down to the main hall to disembark. Unfortunately, this part wasn't as relaxing. There were again massive delays disembarking, and it was pretty chaotic in the main hall. There was a massive queue snaked around the hall, back through the shopping area and all around the hall again, and it took a while to find the end of the queue. In the end, I think we had to wait in the queue for over an hour, and I've got to say it wasn't very well organised. We saw people pushing in, arguing, shouting, even abusing cast members, and to be honest, it wasn't very pleasant to experience. We eventually got off the ship, picked up our luggage, and after a bit of a wait we got a taxi back into the city to enjoy our last few hours in New York. All in all, not the best way to end our cruise. This was our 4th Disney cruise, and we loved these cruises, but this one was a little bit more up and down than normal. We did have a great time overall, but some of the organisation at times wasn't wonderful, and the weather, which of course Disney can't help, did put a dampener on the trip. So overall, we'll of course return on a Disney cruise, but I don't think we'd rush to cruise from New York again at this time of year. Or we'd at least be more picky over the location of our room, certainly not at the front again like this time. We'd definitely go for midship wherever possible going forwards. Part 2 of this vlog is coming next week, where we'll go into more on the ship and the practicalities and tips etc, so make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss this. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or any other tips, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching.